Russian interference in the Brexit referendum has been a constant accusation thrown at the Leave campaign for a number of years. And one of the biggest problems about this is that we still do not know what the actual level of Russian interference there was in the 2016 referendum. And quite frankly, this is something that should be looked into. Even the Russia report basically said, well, or at least the parts of the Russia report that have been released have said, well, we weren't allowed to look into, Russian interference in the 2016 referendum, but from what we can at least say, there might have been, but we weren't allowed to look. Other people who have done this independently have said, yes, there was clearly some form of Russian interference in that 2016 referendum. Not only since then, but all around Europe, Russia has been throwing its influence machine into overdrive, especially for the past 2 years with their ongoing, Ukraine invasion. So it is of no surprise, that shock of all shocks, we have found out today, according to the Sunday Times, that an Irish politician had been honeytrapped to spy on behalf of Russia to undermine UK-Irish relations, or at least damage relations, during the whole Brexit saga. And yet, there was no, yet many people will still claim, there was no Russian interference. Why? Because, of course, that is a most holy and sanctified event. Again, no, that's not how democracy works. That's not how voting works or anything like that. We've been through that argument ad nauseum. This is something we should, and the UK has been taking this seriously a lot more. And I do hope that now we've got a new government, they will take it even more seriously, because this is something we should absolutely be looking into. So before we get more into this, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the What If Nation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on then into this, coming from the Sunday Times. The title of Honeytrapped Irish Politician Spied for Russia During the Brexit Saga. So, Russian intelligence used a honey trap to recruit an Irish politician as an agent for the Kremlin during the Brexit talks. One of the aims was to undermine the relations between Britain, Ireland, and the EU. And the Irish military and security services identified the agent, but remarkably, they are still at large in the country's parliament. Their identity came to be known to the Sunday Times, but for legal reasons, we are calling them Cobalt. A surveillance operation found that they met with Sergei Popiev, a Russian spy who worked out of the Russian embassy in Dublin between 2019 and 2022. In a meeting outside Dublin, Cobalt was then under surveillance by the military and the Irish police, the Garda, who offered to connect the Russians and paramilitaries in Northern Ireland at a sensitive time in the Brexit talks. I just don't know what to say. We've been talking about this for years. But here it is, right in front of us. What's been going on? So, intelligence sources believe the Kremlin hope to exploit tension and now undermine relations between the UK, Ireland, and the EU. Loyalist paramilitaries were then threatening violence over the 2019 and then 2020 Brexit deals, which created a customs border in the Irish Sea to prevent a land border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. Security chiefs believe that Cobalt, who has received no payments from the Russians, was recruited as part of a Honeytrap operations where enemy intelligence officer or an agent lures the target into a compromising sexual encounters. And bear in mind, that is a complete Russian MO. Russian honey traps are a very, very well known. There's meant to be this whole thing that, like, although again, never proven, never been anything like that. That, you know, there's meant to be like a one against Trump, but there's been no evidence or anything like that about it. But you know, this is typical Russian MO. Typical Russian MO. Anyway, between several meetings between Cobalt and a female agent were then lodged. She was monitoring entering on the state on several occasions for short periods, but no action could be taken as Cobalt was not breaking any law. The public figure's internet history intercepted during the travels abroad is understood to have obviously played a role in securing the Compomat against him. According to the files seen by the Sunday Times, Cobalt has traveled to countries outside the European Union where the Russian intelligence service operates freely. Security sources also believe that ego played now a significant role in his willingness to cooperate, saying they used him, but he allowed himself to be used, one said. Cobalt was approached by an Irish Special Branch officers and formally warned that he was being targeted by Russians. His dismissal of those concerned now strengthened all their suspicions about his activities. Profilov, a colonel in the RGU, the Russian military intelligence, worked undercover as a counselor at the Russian embassy. He was one of 4 Russian diplomats kicked out of Ireland in 2022 after being identified as an undeclared intelligence official. Parts were then obviously waived over 600 expulsions and Russian spies across the West after the invasion of Ukraine. Cobalt's recruitment is, of course, the first known infiltration of the Irish Parliament by a hostile intelligence service in modern times. But this follows several other efforts to now compromise politicians in the UK as part of Russia's active measures to destabilize Western society. And that, my friends, should worry us all. Several efforts to compromise politicians in the UK. That, my friends, is where huge worry comes in. Once again, we should be taking the Russia report very, very seriously. How this is not even bigger international news worries me, but there you go. Anyway, Cobalt could not obviously be arrested or even charged with espionage because he did not have access to any classified material. Therefore, he could not disclose its contents to hostile states. But the security services believe he was used as an asset, an easily influenced person who could make introductions, disrupt public debate, or air the Kremlin's views when prompted. He remains now a person of interest to the Garda intelligence and J2, the military intelligence branch of the Irish Defence Forces. Mark Gonnier, a Russian expert, who said using a politician to discreetly upset sentiments around Brexit and other political issues must have looked like a fantastic opportunity for the Russians. Wherever there are now social fracture lines, some smart, ruthless, imaginative, and morally bankrupt Russian intelligence officer is now working out how to widen it now a little further. Bear in mind, look what happened recently with Palestine, Action for Palestine. The factory that they attacked happened to be one of the UK's leading producers of drone defense for the Ukrainians. Questions should be asked about where they got the quote intelligence, and I have to use again intelligence, that apparently that factory was making parts for F-35s with them being shipped to Israel. Where did they get that intelligence, I wonder? Those questions should absolutely be asked. So anyway, back to this. Politicians are, of course, a classic target for Russian services. They have access, they have careers, and they have, where they work on communities, they have also very large egos. And egos is one of the most reputable ways of recruiting people, he said. Politicians have protection because who is going to go after them without evidence? They are, of course, in contact with all sorts of people, ranging from senior officials all the way through to paramilitaries. Generally speaking, Russian services would look at anyone with access now as a viable catch. Kevin Ritchie, a lecturer at Brunel University in London, who previously previously served in various counterintelligence roles in the United States, said that the Honeytrap was now very consistent with Russian active measures. Rishi suspects that Rushel suspects, sorry, Rishi suspects that the Russians who now secretly intervened with Cobalt let him knew that there were certain things about him. The Kremlin's recruitment of an agent within the Irish Parliament happened during a period of escalating tensions between Moscow and Dublin. And until this point, Ireland was viewed as a very permissive environment for Russian intelligence services to operate in the European Union compared with other countries such as France and Britain. That, of course, changed in 2018 when the government moved to stop Russia expanding its embassy after investigation by the Sunday Times that disclosed the Federation was now conducting intelligence gathering bases there. The government was then forced to introduce emergency legislation to revoke the planning permission. So, yeah, why is this not bigger international news? Worries me, worries me very much. I at least would hope, Ireland, also takes this seriously. But we should also be taking this seriously because it was said there, several UK politicians. That should worry us all. That should worry us all. Especially next year, as there is now talks of peace talks happening next year. What interference? What assets? Where are they? We need to sort of really start rooting them out once again and start looking for them. Otherwise, we're going to run into these problems again. And we need to take the threat from Russia seriously. As if we don't, well, they play us for fools constantly. And mostly because of what's been going on in Ukraine, we have taken it at least, the previous government at least decided, oh, well, no, we've actually been taken for fools. And they've done some more stuff. Our current government now also very much pledging, to support Ukraine. However, they've also got to look at this whole area as well. Make sure, that not only are our politicians protected, but we are actively going and shutting down any other areas of interest where Russia might be operating here in the UK. So, as always, let me know what you think down below. But yeah, that's worrying. That is very, very worrying for a whole range of reasons. And yet, shocking to me, this was not a larger story. Maybe it was in Ireland. Maybe if you're in Ireland, you'll let me know. But it seems to me that's kind of worrying. So, as always, thank you for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.